Surprisingly, caffeine is banned from NCAA. So if you have more than 300 milligrams, I think, in your body and you get tested, you won't pass the test.
This is the first generation, my children, to not outlive their parents. Big Pharma has almost pulled out of the Alzheimer's industry because of the failures.
We were able to reduce hippocampal shrinkage by almost 40%. Now we're at 10.4% total body weight loss, which is equivalent to the GLP-1s.
It almost becomes impossible to come off the GLP-1 for people because they gain weight back 4 times faster. If you take a product and lose weight in 2 weeks, it's a stimulant, it's bad for you. Mechanical engineers, I think they're the brightest minds on the planet. Rarely do I do shows about product. Well, this one's important because this is a brain product that's been studied for 10 years out of Duke University. Yep, and it is absolutely working better than the drugs that they tested. Okay, that's one thing, but yet there's another. Here's another reason I brought these products, because it impacts weight loss. Yes, it competes with GLP-1s, and it's going to help, I believe, many people be able to come off the GLP-1s. That's my opinion. And I do believe it will keep people from even taking GLP-1s once they watch this show. I'm telling you, this is a big product everyone's going to need to know about. And I'm here with Lance Converse.
Thank you.
All right, Lance, where did all this start, right? There's a great story here, pain to purpose story of how this product, this company ended up where it is. And a lot of research, 8 years of research to be here today.
That's right.
And that's one of the things I want people to hear. But it all started with one of the founders of the company. Was it their father?
The father, yeah.
Okay, tell that story.
Yeah, so Tonum was founded almost 10 years ago, probably 12 years ago when he came up with the idea. And it's my partner, Mark Brasso, was the founder of the company. And I've known Mark for 35 years. Him and I have been business colleagues in other businesses before. And when I invested in his last company, which is a healthcare data company, and by the way, neither of us are physicians or scientists, as you know. I'm a mechanical engineer. And when I invested in his last company called Purple Lab, I saw him at an Alzheimer's conference, and he was talking to doctors who were circled around him, very interested. And I'm like, what does Mark know about Alzheimer's disease? I did a lot of Alzheimer's research, but I didn't think he had any background in it. And it turns out when I took him to the side, he said, yeah, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease a couple of years ago. And the same week, my son got diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a precursor. Those kids can get Alzheimer's disease by the time they're 40. In fact, a lot of them do. And he said, so I've been taking the last 4 or 5 years and immersing myself into research. And this is before Claude or ChatGPT could look at, pharmaceutical articles. And he read probably 5,000 journals, articles, and came up with this formula to help his father potentially delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease and obviously his son. So he came up with this natural formula, and I think it was like 12 ingredients at that particular time of natural ingredients. And what was interesting is he doesn't think of things like a scientist. He thinks of them completely different. So he was in his novel approach was interesting because, and I think this is something that you're interested in as well, is that he knew that if he didn't activate the metabolic system, he would never help prevent amyloid plaque excretion from the brain. So he was actually activating the liver with these ingredients and getting them through the blood-brain barrier, which helped reduce the amyloid beta plaque.
Right.
So when I met him, he was talking to clinicians about that, looking to raise money. And I was already an investor and a board member of his other company. I said, well, shoot, Mark, I would be interested in doing this and investing with you if you're open to it. And he said, of course, we're just starting our animal studies at Duke. So, why don't you come in before this data comes back? We'll get a good valuation for you. And that's how I got involved.
Yeah. In Duke University, 8 years of study, right?
Now 10.
10.
Yes.
Okay. 10 years of study. What did the study show? Because when we're looking right now, there's an explosion of neurodegenerative conditions, right? And the fact that it can make a difference in the plaque formed in the brain. By the way, there's not been one drug to do that.
Right.
Not one.
Right.
That has any impact on Parkinson's. I could go down the list, MS, dementia, Alzheimer's in particular, nothing really impacts it. this did.
Right. And funny enough, when we went down there, the co-chair of neurology and the professor of neurology said, look, we'll take your money if you want to do these studies, but it's a long shot.
Yeah.
And so they decided to do the studies, and basically to be able to do those types of studies, you have to knock in an APOE44 gene into a mouse. And we had to actually breed about 800 mice to do the study. And what happened was it took us about a year and a half to breed those mice. So a very expensive process. It takes a long time because they have to go through the whole process of giving them the gene and so forth. And then when we started,
but just because you give them the gene doesn't even mean they get the condition.
That's exactly right.
You have to go through another process.
It's usually like 1 in 4 breeding them
exactly,
and so forth. Exactly right. So we're going through this process, invested the money into it. A guy named Patrick Sullivan was one of only 2 clinicians that did this in the United States, or in the world for that matter. And basically the way that he exacerbates Alzheimer's disease is by putting them on a high-fat diet as well. So as you know, obesity and
these are really bad fats.
Exactly.
Some high-fat diets are good. They were giving them a bad diet to induce it.
That's right. So we get a phone call. Mark gets a phone call, my partner, that says, Mark, we've got a hit on these mice. And at that point, we were just measuring amyloid plaque buildup. He said, it's pretty impressive. It's better than any of the drugs, and exactly what you said, better than any of the medical drugs that we worked on. So you guys probably should fly down here and go through this data with us. And we did. And that's when they started looking at all the metabolomics of the product as well. So we started doing additional studies, and we saw at that particular time, we were looking at the data and said, this is a significant reduction in what they call small particles and medium particles. The larger particles of amyloid plaque, when they measure them, from my understanding, is they're a little least concerning. It's the small ones that will accumulate and become bigger ones. And we had an 85 or almost 88% reduction in small particle, a 66% reduction in medium particle, and then something about a 40 or 30% on the large particle. So that was pretty impressive to them. And that's when the chairman of neurology at Duke got involved with us. And they were originally naysayers or almost laughed us out of Duke to then joining us on our scientific advisory board. So in further studies, we started seeing
they couldn't believe the result, honestly, because they've watched so much money Big Pharma has almost pulled out of the Alzheimer's industry, if you will, if there's an industry, but of the research anyway. Because of the failures.
That's right.
So they saw a positive, and they were all in at that point.
Yeah, and I did so much research. I did probably 80% of all the research studies that were done. My company was an outsourced company that did clinical research for obesity, medications, and Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
And I knew 98% of them fail in clinical research studies. So I knew it was a gamble for us, but because it was a novel idea and using natural ingredients that would get through the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah,
and because it was 7.
Folks, these are all natural ingredients.
That's right.
That's right. So I want people to hear that again.
Right, and we had to be very careful about picking the right ones because berberine, for example, didn't measure in the brain. We couldn't get any measurement at all. So we had to go with Berbavis, which is a phospholipid-coated berberine.
Yeah, and I want to stop there because when I looked at the ingredients, I'm like, okay, so what's special here? That was one of the things that, I realized, they have something special going on with berberine, which, by the way, can impact blood glucose levels. But a lot of these things look great in vitro, but they don't transition into the body. Berberine, one of them, because it doesn't even get across the blood-brain barrier until you did this procedure.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. And same with milk thistle. That's also a phospholipid-coated milk thistle, which basically helps activate the liver as well. So
let me ask something about that. And this is just for me. When you put something in what is called a liposome, right, it helps typically penetrate the gut. But why does this liposome, why did it help penetrate the brain? Usually by the time it goes systemic, the liposome is gone. It delivered it through the gut. But how does this one get into the brain? Because it doesn't stay in liposome.
That's right. And it must have to do with the length of time it gets, because other liposomes don't either.
Yeah.
So it has to do with the time it gets through the gut into the portal vein probably, and then through the process, because we couldn't figure that out. We actually are still pretty we think we know what the mechanism of action is, but that would cost a lot of money because it's a 7-ingredient formula for Neurum, not for the weight loss product, which is another interesting story on how that became,
We'll
how
get there.
we found that, right? So we don't exactly know because we didn't have $40 million to throw at this.
Did you all develop this berberine technology?
No, we didn't. We used it from a company called Indina.
Okay.
And we actually just tested a new version of a different formula from a different company that also has a similar type of coating that's twice as effective as this.
Wow.
So you can use a lot less of the dose and it's a lot less money, but it's twice as effective that uses a pharmaceutical process for coating, which I can't disclose right now, but it's similar in nature. And we just measured it and we looked at it from a weight loss standpoint and measured mice that were taking one version versus the other, twice as effective in weight loss, even better than dihydroberberine.
Wow.
Which when we measured them all, also we're able to measure it in the brain. So we're always looking at still doing research and looking at ways to improve the product and look at more effectiveness. But getting back to what was happening with the neuro product and the other tests we were doing, we saw other areas that were surprising to us because we were looking to reduce amyloid plaque. We were actually not trying to reduce amyloid plaque. We were trying to allow the body to excrete it, which we did. So we were looking at more of like turning the body back on into homeostasis that allows it to excrete amyloid plaque. So instead of building it up, so it didn't reverse it.
And I want to make a prediction. I believe, this is my belief, that Alzheimer's is more than just amyloid plaque. So I believe this product is doing more.
That's right.
I believe that, that again, insulin can be very damaging. People that run high insulin levels, it can cause inflammation in the brain. And, I believe that this product's addressing that in a big way.
That's right.
There's something called IDE, insulin degrading enzyme, that gets depleted. And we know that, these cases go through the roof when that starts to occur. So I have a feeling this is doing more than even what y'all studied.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
And, but what we did measure and what we did see were some very interesting, anecdotal or side effects or benefits, if you will. So we looked at hippocampal shrinkage because of course that happens when, you do or don't reduce the amyloid plaque or allow it to excrete. And we were able to reduce hippocampal shrinkage by almost 40%, which we did in repeating studies. No. But then we looked at other things like, neuronal growth, and we're able to measure GFAP. And consistently, we were seeing 30 to 40% improvement. So neuronal growth improvement by 30 to 40%.
You have another ingredient in there. It's a special form of alpha lipoic acid. It's the R version, more expensive version, that can actually help a lot of that growth, actually.
Exactly.
It helps the nerves. It actually helps even the mitochondrial health. So,
that's right.
So that didn't surprise me. When I looked through the ingredients, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So,
that's right. Yeah. And we did switch out one or two. And it's a patented formula. We added alpha GPC and paraxanthine to the formula.
Yeah, and alpha GPC is a specific fat that, gets into the brain.
That's right.
It's a form of phosphatidylcholine.
That's right. That's right. And one of the reasons we did that was more on the commercial side than anything, because we knew that we had a really good prevention product for preventing the onset of Alzheimer's disease. And of course, as a supplement company, we can't say that. We can always make it a drug if we want to, but it would be very difficult with 7 ingredients to ever get it approved by the FDA. The FDA doesn't like a dual formula product or dual therapy product, let alone having something that's 7 ingredients, because they would put you through enormous amounts of requirements to do clinical trials. So that's why I like the fact that we have a natural product that's developed like a pharmaceutical drug. But when we looked at the market and said, are we going to be able to really sell a product that's going to help someone think about preventing something that could happen to them in 20 years. And that's not really an easy sell. So we said, well, what if we had a couple of ingredients that would help improve near-term cognitive benefit, plus provide the new long-term cognitive.
That's how the alpha GPC ended up in there. What was the other one?
Paraxanthine.
The paraxanthine.
And paraxanthine's that alternative. It's a caffeine metabolite. And we didn't want to go with caffeine because we wanted because I have a lot of interest in, I'm involved in professional sports. And we wanted to make sure that it would be approved by, any of the organizations. So, surprisingly, caffeine is banned from NCAA. So if you have more than 300 milligrams, I think, in your body and you get tested, you won't pass the test.
Well, I don't know how they can drink these energy drinks.
Exactly.
Because they have, all of them have more than that.
That's exactly
350 or more.
So they tell them they have to not drink that before, if they're going to get drug tested. But if they do, they got to go back and get drug tested again. But all the coaches said, no caffeine. So we found paraxanthine through Sean Wells.
Yeah.
And I like that anyways, because it provides people with a better, it's not the really fast up, and then you don't have the really fast down.
Well, I take your product, took it today.
Yep.
I think I love it. I mean, again, I'm taking it because I know the ingredients. I'm taking it for the brain health benefits of the stuff in there. But it was smart you putting that in there because I feel it.
I feel it too, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And it's probably the paranthema because it's like, you feel it. And it's like you kind of get that, that focus that you get from caffeine without the weird buzz, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was actually the other part of that when we internally looked at it, and they said, people are going to also have to feel this pretty immediately. So alpha GPC, typically people notice after 8 to 12 days, the onset, versus other products that might take, other ingredients that could take 2 or 3 months. I felt it was really important that we give somebody something immediate and then something at least in 2 or 3 weeks where they could start feeling cognitively better. And then we started doing the testing on that. So across the board, not only were we able to prevent, the onset of amyloid plaque, and also improve the excretion of amyloid plaque, but also some of the other targets that we would think of for neuronal growth and executive function that you would want. So and did a lot of tests, and then did the animal test for recurring concussion brain injury, because of the fact that we were helping improve, reduce swelling of the brain. We were looking at NAFL and looking at some of these other areas. We thought, athletes probably could use something that gives them performance on the field plus long-term neuroprotection. So we plan on doing that study with some really good scientists that are very well known, probably next year. We were planning on it this year.
I think most people watching this, they should fear Alzheimer's, dementia. I mean, really any of the neurodegenerative conditions, but they probably don't yet, right? Maybe people who've seen it happen in their family, but in the numbers, the increase, do you know the numbers on that Alzheimer's right now?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I know. I
used to know them, but
I should have pulled them up. I usually do know them, but it's I can tell you this, it's going up. And there's reasons for that.
They're supposed to be up to 50 million by 2030.
Yeah.
And that's only 4 years away.
Right. That's right. Exactly. By 2030, 50 million people. So everyone out there should be
And they're
concerned.
raising that every year.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. And they're raising that every year. So everybody should be concerned, especially if you're, and again, I want to say over the age of 40, but where does it start? It starts, much earlier than that, especially today.
That's right.
And this is the first generation, my children did not outlive their parents. All these degenerative chronic conditions are happening in them starting earlier. So we're going to see Alzheimer's coming down into this age group. We've never seen it before, just like many of the conditions. But most people will say, I just can't deal with my brain fog. I can't deal with
that's exactly
I
right.
just feel like I'm just can't think through myself. That's why you'll sell more of the product, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, so it was smart doing that because it really does impact that.
Yeah. And we needed to think about that. And from a marketing standpoint, that is what hits home with people.
Yeah.
They're more interested in brain fog and, helping improve memory than they're ever thinking about long-term.
Have you noticed it impacting anything like anxiety, sleep? Any of these other conditions that so many people have?
Definitely sleep. I mean, with the paraxanthine, we tell people to take it in the morning, and it's for the morning anyways. It's better because you're going to get that lift all day long, and most people feel that. But because they're getting that earlier in the morning, we are getting, because we do a lot of data collection still, not necessarily in the clinical trials because we finished that last clinical trial, but customers, when they fill out forms, are saying they're definitely getting much better sleep. And we're not sure if it's because of the weight loss benefits or the brain health benefits. But that'll come out next year when we start doing more advanced clinical studies, both in larger human populations.
Which let's shift it, because now you have two products. One product that is focused on weight loss.
Right.
It literally is I'm trying to phrase this correctly without
a mistake.
Without a mistake. But it is competing with the GLP-1s.
Right.
If anything can compete with GLP-1s, and it's only a few ingredients different than the brain product.
Well, it wasn't actually a mistake is not the right word. It was a complete unexpected surprise.
Yeah.
Is how we found out.
Yeah. So tell that story because,
Right.
I mean, in this really, I mean, okay, again, the brain product, you have to deal with the metabolism, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And because of that, it led into, oh my gosh, people lose massive amounts of weight on this.
Right.
We have a product that compete with the group of people that wouldn't take GLP-1s, or the people who are now trying to come off of them.
That's right.
I've recommended the product for that.
Yep.
So talk about this story.
So there's a couple of these stories in our history as a company, but this one came out of those original mouse studies that we were doing. And at first we thought it was a big problem, because when we got the phone call, this is probably into our second or third study, there was an observation that the mice that were on active ingredient, because they're all, again, on a very high fat diet, and they're starting out at 40-gram mice, and they go straight up. But the mice that up in terms of weight, but the mice that were on active ingredients were actually losing weight. And then when they were doing fat percentages, they found that they were losing mostly fat versus lean mass. So in some of the mice that were actually gaining lean mass.
By the way, unlike GLP-1s.
That's right.
Where you're losing majority muscle, versus fat. And, that's why it's very difficult to come off.
That's right. That's right. And we can get into that too, because I'm very concerned about that. Just as concerned as you are. But so we got a phone call that said these mice are losing a lot of weight. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if we're killing the mice or not, but they turned it over to the metabolomics group with John Campbell and the chief of endocrinology down at Duke. They started doing their metabolomics on it and said, we think this is actually burning fat and sparing lean mass. They did more studies and found out it was activating AMPK and inhibiting mTOR, which was optimizing the ATP production and NAD pools, which basically in essence means that it's increasing your energy production and you're burning more, burning calories. Mm-hmm. So we thought that was interesting. Of course, some of the higher ups at Duke said those animals are just not eating the formula. They said, no, we did food intake studies. They're eating, because these studies were going on for years. So that's when we started looking at this from a metabolic standpoint and saying, well, Mark did think about this, but we never anticipated that would work that well with mice. So when we were thinking about launching the product in 2020, early 2025, I said, I just feel, and I talked to my VP of marketing, Channing, who is a very smart young woman. And she said, why don't we just finish this human study? We're not really ready to market this yet. We were doing a brand change, a name change of the company at the time. And she was brilliant about putting the name Tonum and motus and nouro together, because motus means motion in Latin. Tonum means total.
Tonum's
the parent company name, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Tonum means total health, or tone in Latin. Motus means motion for the metabolomic, for the weight loss product. And neuro, of course, is neurology.
Yeah. So neuro is the brain one, and we already discussed. That's the product name.
That's right.
Tonus, the company. And then
motus. Yeah.
Motus is the weight loss one that you're discussing right now.
So we thought about it and said, why don't we do a study? And we started out at being a 3-month study, because what we were doing for that particular study wasn't going to be a super high impact FDA managed study, even though we ran it like one. It was more to get some market adoption and understand what the patients were getting. And it's just to be able to get patient testimonials. Mm-hmm. We did not expect it to have the results it did, but we ran it like an FDA study. We didn't do biomarker work on it, though. We did file with the government and so forth. And I hired some of my old clinical research people, mostly dietitians, to run the study, because they ran obesity studies for me before. We screened them. We gave them baseline. We gave them all activity trackers and diet and exercise trackers. And they also got a body fat scale. So 3 months into the study, 100 patients completed the study, and we had an average weight loss of 5.1%. What was interesting is 90% of that weight was fat versus lean mass.
Yeah, which is
unlike a GLP-1, which is 30 to 40%,
yeah.
or even up to 50%, depending on the study that you look at. So we thought, shoot, we might as well extend this study if the patients were interested in it. It was an easy study to do. And we said, okay, we'll go. And we did give them some ability, if they wanted to have a dietitian, but they were not caloric restricted at all. They were basically said, you eat what you want to eat. You just have to track it in a product called MyNet Diary, which I had also used in my clinical research days. And it's good because it tracks every food and it gives you the macros and so forth. One of like MyFitnessPal, MyNet Diary, the two leading ones that are out there. A year or 6 months goes by. We collect the data again. Now we're at 10.4% total body weight loss, which is equivalent to the GLP-1s, not tirzepatide, but semaglutide. But again, at that point, it was 87% loss of body fat versus 13% lean mass. So we also extended it then for the year. So about 50% of those patients decided that they want to stay on the study and continue to report in every week, getting on their scales, filling out their diaries, because that can be a pain. And a lot of them had already gotten to where they wanted to lose weight. So they stayed on and ended up at 11.5% total body weight loss after a year, with no oversight or supervision, no caloric restrictions. And what was really interesting about this is that we organized them into cohorts. So we had four cohorts, and I don't want to have to get into that. People can read the study on our website. But what was interesting is the patients that were on a strict diet, self-imposed, and exercise 4 to 5 times a week were up in the 20% total body weight loss.
That's amazing.
The patients that were on a terrible diet, that never changed their diet, still ate pizza 4 nights a week or 5 nights a week and just ate garbage food and never exercised the entire study, we're still in about 7.7% total body weight loss. So even those patients in that lower cohort still had statistically significant weight loss. So we know it's doing, we know it's doing something.
My team, y'all who do the editing, clipping, that was a great Instagram piece right there. I'm serious. Clip that.
Yeah. So that was pretty exciting. We presented that data at FNCE, which is the dietitian conference, to a standing room group of dietitians, and they were all thrilled about it because, I don't think many of them are, getting behind a GLP-1 because they're not endorsed by the pharmaceutical companies or encouraged to do it. But they thought it was fantastic. And our booth usually was 3 or 4 or 5 of the 5 people deep. And they were very interested in hearing about what we were doing. And then we presented it at Obesity Week, both the preclinical data, and I want to tell you about that because that's kind of interesting, on 2 studies that we did, and then the clinical data. And I was really shocked how many physicians were interested in this because I thought they would have the pharma companies would have their hands in these doctors' pockets, and I was completely shocked. They were definitely not. There was a lot of people that share your concern and my concern about what's really going to happen long term with these GLP-1s if people are not educated in figuring out what they can do. And getting back to the data that was presented, one of the papers we presented in the poster session was, well, what would happen? And this was a hypothesis that Duke had and said, look, let's run this study. We think it's pretty important. What would happen if we gave motus, which has a different mechanism of action, with semaglutide at a very low dose and microdosed it? Do you think we could have an impact? And what would happen if we take this is mice again, just so you know, we didn't do the human study on this. We're going to. But what would happen if we microdosed a GLP-1 and gave it with motus and then compared it to semaglutide? We did that. The first study we did had such a tremendous impact that because the mice that were on the dual therapy at 1/10 of the amount of semaglutide lost 8 times more weight in 6 days versus the mice that were on semaglutide alone in 17 days.
How did it impact the muscle? Because
So I'll get to that. So because after 6 days, we did look at that. Unfortunately, the mice lost so much weight. Duke Ethics makes you can't kill a mouse that way. We had to take them off the semaglutide and allow them to stabilize on motus alone. The mice that were on motus after semaglutide were still lost more weight over a length of time than the mice that were on semaglutide. So the mice that were on semaglutide lost about 15% total body weight loss. The mice that were on dual therapy and then just on motus lost about 15%. And that lasted out for over 100 days. So,
but motus works so good on its own.
Yeah, for sure.
Arguably with the people who changed their diet, it worked double. It is good. So why put them together?
That was a study that Duke wanted to do with us.
Okay. All right.
So the question we have to ask ourselves from our vantage point is, we don't know what GLP-1s are going to do. We don't know what the government's going to do with them or not. We sell it as an alternative, and we think that's what patients should do. And
Yeah,
we
I
also have
would.
dietitians that work for our company.
Yeah.
And if I hear, for example, that one of our patients comes through our help desk and says, yeah, I've been on this for 2 months. I haven't really seen it, noticed any change. We get them on the phone with the dietitian immediately because something's not right, because we know the product works. So we don't usually we get one of those, one person every 2 or 3 weeks that gives us that feedback, over 10, thousands and thousands that are buying the product. So we're always trying to figure out, make sure that we're thinking, investing in their future and their journey as well. Even the small number of people it doesn't work for. But longer term, the question is, if people are going to take a GLP-1, is there an option for us to, can we support them after they're taking, after they're taking the GLP-1?
Yeah,
but
because
also
when people come off, it almost becomes impossible to come off the GLP-1 for people.
That's exactly
because
right.
they gain weight back 4 times faster. It's
not good weight.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Yeah, they end up worse. They end up with less muscle and like more fat. So in their minds, they look worse. They get skinny fat even.
That's right.
So yeah.
So we looked at it and said, are we always going to try to compete against the GLP-1? Is there a way that we can actually do a human study that if somebody wants to take a low dose or a microdose GLP-1, not get the side effects, potentially not get nearly the amount of lean mass loss, and take motus with it, is that we can't sell it as a product like that. We can't say it's an adjunctive therapy product, but that could be something with a clinical trial we could get doctors interested in. That could come in the middle of the road.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're completely against GLP-1s.
Because the doctors are having a problem here. I mean, a lot of people are getting symptoms from the GLP-1s, right? After they've been on a while. And therefore now they're saying, okay, we have to come off, but coming off, they gain the weight back. So I think you're right. I think it's a good selling point to sell it with the GLP-1, lowering the GLP-1 dose, and then putting them on this. I could see you getting the doctor's interest in that, because otherwise getting the doctors to sell it, I don't know. It's a tough sale.
It's not, I don't think we could ever get doctors to sell anything.
Yeah.
But if we can get the scientific community behind it by doing good, rigorous clinical trials, saying, look, there's an option here where you can actually legitimately microdose a GLP-1 with a product that's going to help from a different mechanism of action, you might get a better benefit without the long-term side effects, is how we look at it.
Yeah. And people that listening to this who haven't started GLP-1, don't use this.
Right.
I mean, honestly, it works obviously just as good, if not better. I would argue better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the one thing,
can you claim that? Can you claim that it works better just because the people who changed their
we can't
diet
claim
got
it.
20%?
Legally?
Yeah. Okay.
We can't claim it. We can actually get on Meta and we can say it, but then we have to bleep out the words.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Meta doesn't allow us to say things. That's all right. So yeah, we can't make that claim. But what we try to do as a company that's really important is to set expectations, because I didn't come into the company to do anything other than try to really make the product beneficial for a long-term sustainable weight loss. That's why we have dietitians that work for our company. And that's why when we do hear these, outliers or people that are not seeing what they want, most of the time it's small little tweaks that they can make to their diet that they didn't think about. Like one guy didn't understand that pizza night was not 3 nights a week. It was once every 3 weeks. In his mind, he just didn't get that. So we're always trying to educate the patients. And we've actually we almost have, and we might decide we're not even going to sell a 1 month supply anymore, because we know it takes about 6 to 8 weeks. If you're going to change your metabolism, then people are starting to think, okay, this is going to make me not hungry in 3 weeks. And automatically they're not losing 10 pounds and they don't buy another bottle. And that's not beneficial to them. It's not beneficial to us, because we have to have patient acquisition costs or customer acquisition costs. So we really try to take a lot of time to educate them. We give them a premium version of My Net Diary as soon as they buy that, because we want them to track their food. We want them to educate them about what they're eating, because in the long run, even if they take our product and they keep eating garbage, they may not take our product forever and they're still going to be eating the same stuff. And we're trying to do this in a more holistic approach where we're giving them all the tools that they need to help them metabolically.
So both products, how many people take both products versus one product? Can you take both products? How do you take the products?
You shouldn't. So you should not, because that would give you a very high dose of nicotinamide. And we actually recently did a study for motus where we're now able to reduce the nicotinamide from 850 down to 425. So we did a dose ranging study, and we also looked at effectiveness.
Tell them what nicotinamide is and does.
It's vitamin B3.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then tell what is the reason why you would only want to take so much of that?
Well, that's a therapeutic dose. So people get worried about it. Their doctors, some people are required to take that, but it can cause, headaches here and there and side effects. But for the most part, it's much higher than the recommended daily allowance, which many times is not exactly accurate anyways. So we looked at it, and we started seeing patients that were coming back saying, well, my doctor said it's too high of a dose. We did our studies to see if we could actually reduce it without affecting them, having the metabolic effect, and it didn't. Mm. So we were able to reduce that. But yeah, so people take the product, 4 capsules in the morning for both motus and for neuro. And we recently just came out with a couple of new formulations. We are just finalizing a formulation for an electrolyte version of the drink stick. We came out with the first version for motus with that. It tasted okay. It didn't taste great. It's the nature of the ingredients that make it extremely better. We've tried so many different things, and another interesting, not mistake, but finding was I was on the phone with a woman that was developing a bitter blocker for us, which makes the berberine and the paraxanthine less bitter, so you can actually it's good for the palate. It's actually edible. And I was doing it in the form of supplement bars. And I was talking to her on the phone one day, and I said, well, how do you test this? She said, we just put it in water. I'm like, well, you don't put it in my supplement bar form to see what it tastes like with peanut butter? She's like, no, I just put it in water and taste it. But I normally will just put some Propel in the water too, because I want to get my electrolytes and it makes it taste better. And I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. Why don't we think about that? So that's how the idea of developing the electrolyte version of that came. And then
so you have the same ingredients in an electrolyte product.
So you can take it in the morning. And
you much have more that product now.
We have it for motus, not for neuro. Neuro is much more challenging. Paraxanthine is also just as challenging. But again, in how most of the time in drug development works, there's a lot of mistakes that happen. And I happen to mix 2 of the different bitter blockers together by mistake in our lab. And that was the answer to solving the bitterness problem. Because now we've been able to solve the bitterness problem for neuro, which is the electrolyte drink stick for neuro.
You'll have a powder version of that as well.
Yeah. So in both of them now taste great. I just circulated them with the internal team. We're going to be doing the manufacturing for them. So that's the electrolyte version of that. And then we also developed, and I think you're going to love this. I haven't told you this yet, but we have a nutritional supplement bar version that also tastes great. We now have 3 flavors that just finished its pilot manufacturing. When we're talking about pilot manufacturing, we're just talking about doing a small run of 1,000 bars to see if it can actually withstand the manufacturing process, how we do it. Do we extrude it or we flat roll it? But also, does it have the shelf life that you need? Because you have to go through testing for 3 or 6 months. So we're going to come out with a bar version for peanut butter chocolate, salted caramel, and then probably cinnamon bun for neuro and for motus, which will be sugar-free. It will be, and why we want to do that is because people need protein.
Just make sure you be careful. Use like a monk fruit sweetener or something.
We're very careful about that. So we're using monk fruit as the sweetener, and the only sweetener. And it's 23 grams of protein, probably about 185 calories to 170 calories, depending on which type of bar it is. 14 grams of fiber and no sugar.
So how does someone choose which one? Because you said, pick one, right? But let's say you have someone who wants to lose weight, and support their brain. So they would just choose the neuro because really it's very similar. I mean, the motus is in the neuro. I know.
And they're both priced the same.
Yeah, but you have to people are going to ask that question.
I take neuro every day.
Yeah. So because that's the one I like is the neuro because I feel the brain, right? And of course I'm 60 years old. So I can support the brain.
I'm right there with you.
And you still have the motus within that product, right?
That's right.
Yeah. It's not lacking anything that I saw.
No. I mean, I recommend everybody all my friends take neuro because you get the benefit. I mean, it is a slightly lower dose of the metabolics, but we did not see a difference between neuro and motus in terms of any of the weight loss.
Okay.
So you're right about that. But what we're doing, which is interesting about the supplement bar, which I haven't told you, is that we found a version of creatine, which at least 2 of the companies are using to make creatine gummies that actually tested positive, not negative. They actually worked. You know how they had the gummy issue with none of the creatine was working, because creatine changes its chemical structure after you heat it up, or if you put it in water for too long. The company that makes it for those 2 companies, I researched and found it's the same company that actually makes that other version of berberine that I was telling you about. And they use that same process that pharmaceutical companies use to it's a liposomal type process. And I found them and started talking. I was talking to them about their product, the metabolic, the berberine product, and they said, "Oh, you should try our creatine product." And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And he told me,
good for the brain.
Exactly. That's why we put it. So we now have just finalized the supplement bar, because that's hard to put into a capsule because you have to take 5 to 7 grams of it. But we did get it in the supplement bar, and it tastes great. It's out for testing right now, so I should know within 4 weeks if that's going to have the amount of creatine it has in it. But that neuro bar will be pretty important. Again, 7 grams of creatine in a drink stick is going to be hard, to get if you're doing those individual drink sticks, but the bar is great.
You could use the HCl version.
That's right.
And put it's really acidy, but if you're liposoming it, you won't have.
That's right.
Would stay in a liposome though. I mean, I'm jumping ahead. The reason I say that is because women want the benefits of creatine, but they oftentimes hold water.
That's right.
The HCl version, number one, you can take way less.
That's right.
So especially for the brain, because you get up into over 10,000 grams to where they really show the benefits of the brain. Well, if women take that, they hold water, so women don't like.
That's right. That's right.
But the HCl, they could take as low as 3,000 and get the same benefits as a high dose.
Yeah.
So, and they don't retain water.
Yeah. So we're actually doing some bioavailability testing with them now for the creatine. We have already done it for their berberine product, and again, it was amazing. It was surprising how much more effective it was across the board, both on the metabolomics as well as the actual animal studies on the weight loss. So that was important. And now we're looking at the creatine product, because if it holds up, that's going to be pretty powerful, because we think it's going to be we're pretty sure it's going to be the first supplement bar that actually has validated human clinical trials to back it. But it will definitely be the first supplement bar, that will have the human weight loss studies, or at least validated human clinical research studies. But the neuro bar will be the first one with legitimate creatine in it that also has cognitive benefit with human studies.
We have my doctor coaching group right now testing all the products.
Oh, good.
And you came on and you educated them, and so we can't wait to get our results back. But we're not saying we're Duke University by any means.
Well, it was funny because I was talking to somebody at Colton, or I think one of your folks. I said, "Do those guys know that I'm a mechanical engineer? I am not a doctor."
Yeah. No.
Said, no
By the way, mechanical engineers, I think they're the brightest minds on the planet, because
sometimes,
I mean, it's just, it takes a lot to be a mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
The way the brain works, figuring problems out. They're very resourceful. They think, top down, figuring things out, solution oriented. I mean, they're involved in a lot of different discoveries. I think probably most patents are held by mechanical engineers. At least someone told me that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I lasted for about 3 years I worked at Boeing, the Boeing company, and that working for a big company as a problem solver does not work that well, because nobody wants to change anything. Don't reinvent the wheel was what I kept hearing. And I was trying to come up with cost savings here and there.
Yeah.
And then I just got into starting my own company and getting into pharmaceuticals. And that's helped me quite a bit, because it's always been smaller companies. I think as a mechanical engineer for a really big company, unless you're Elon Musk, that would be challenging for me, because I like to stay in the nitty gritty doing things myself. I even do a lot of the work out of my test kitchen that I built specifically to be able to make these supplement bars. Yeah. And I probably made 5,000 of them, because I can't get through. I couldn't figure out the taste problem. Yeah. Getting the bar out to people, unless it tastes great, they're not going to eat it. They just don't care. And exactly. I even have done just CEO, social media videos to say, look, for the first batch of our electrolyte, this stuff tastes good. It doesn't taste great. So if you think this is going to taste like Kool-Aid, it's not for you. But if you want to lose weight and you have an okay tasting or pretty good tasting, electrolyte, this is what you want.
Well, I promise you I'll do a social media video and I'll give you my honest opinion about the bar and the electrolyte.
Yeah, we'll have them coming your way.
Here's the danger. It's my honest opinion.
I don't care. That's fine.
It's like I might, because I've tasted products that I'm like, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I like the ingredients, but I hate the taste.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's the opposite. I love the taste, but I don't like these ingredients. So,
well, I think I have actually burnt my taste buds out from having too many bars. So I actually have to give it to my wife to taste it and all the rest of my team, because sometimes I'm like, okay, this tastes pretty good. And they'll look at me and say, now I'm getting to the point where I think I can get it right. So I know the aftertaste, because it's usually the 5 minutes after the bar is when you start feeling that berberine. Mm-hmm. So we finally kind of figured that out. And, I'm circulating another version of those next week, and we'll see how the team feels.
That liposome berberine, it's holding up in the cooking process, if you will.
Oh yeah, the berberine definitely does. Mm-hmm. It's the creatine that we were worried about. Yeah. The berberine will.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not really. It's a cold mold for the bar anyways. It's not cooking.
All right.
Yeah. So it's just about being in liquid. So if you have, like, for example, we use liquid monk fruit because we need something we can't have water in it. Mm-hmm. We can't have much water in the protein bar for a number of reasons, the shelf life, but also that's really what hurts the creatine. So if you have it in a water base, it usually will change the chemical structure, which is why a lot of those gummy bears didn't pass. And I don't know. I was talking to the guys from Supco a while ago about what their perspective was when they did that analysis. I said, did you feel like they were actually did they know that they didn't have creatine in them? They said some of them might have, but others probably didn't know. They probably tested them immediately after they made manufacturing. Mm-hmm. But when it's on the shelf for a month or two, which is what Supco does, they don't wait. They don't pick it right up like NSF or any of those testing facilities. They'll wait till it's on the shelf, which is the right way to do it, to see if it deteriorates or not.
Yeah. Makes sense. People are going to ask, how do you find the product? Where should they go?
So Tonum.com is where you would get the products right now. We're just starting to move into Amazon because the products it's a very expensive ingredients. And we're trying to keep the price point at $60 a month, which I think is the right price point. But our margins didn't support Amazon. Mm-hmm. We finally figured out a way with enough production volume to at least introduce it to Amazon and see what we can do. Because you're really down to small single-digit profit margins. And a small company having $7 million into research and now just launching in September of last year, we needed to make sure that we didn't overextend and just spend another $10 million of marketing. And going to Amazon, I think it's 25% margin that they get plus another 10% that you have to do in co-marketing. Mm-hmm. So that's where your margins are there. So we're finally, after 6 months of launching, just starting on the Amazon store now, and then on TikTok.
Tonum.com, spell it just so people.
Yeah, Tonum.
Okay, Tonum.com. All the products are there. Yep. The new bars will be there.
They will be there,
right?
People, and the new electrolytes, the new version with the new better tasting electrolytes.
Yeah, the better tasting electrolytes. I have the bad tasting electrolytes. Yep. So we're looking forward to the new version of that.
They're much better.
But here's the good news: the neuro product and the modem, it's a pill, so you don't have to worry about the taste. Exactly. So 4 a day in the morning, pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Is there a time that people can decrease their dose because they're feeling like, is there a maintenance dose is what I'm asking?
I don't know. It's only been, we only finished the 1 year study in January of this year. So it started January 2025. So we definitely plan on doing a couple of more, human research studies with it. We were pretty busy with another acquisition that we did. So, next year I think we'll have better long-term human data because I do like to collect that. Some of it's going to be more anecdotal for patients that just want some free supplements that are willing to give us data. Mm-hmm. Others are going to be actually validated human studies because the ones that, for example, that we're going to do where we're adding motus to a GLP-1 have to be filed with the FDA as an IND study.
Yeah.
So, with an IRB and so forth. So they actually have to be legitimate because you're giving a patient a dose. So we can do that through my other company. But we should have some pretty good data, I think, over the next year or two.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great product. And I know you've stirred many people to say, I need this product. And I'll tell you, I don't do many shows on products. I just thought this one was very important. Number one, for the brain. Yep. Number two, the fact that it's competing with the GLP-1s. I feel like people are going to need a product, and many people need a product to come off of them. And I'm hoping people don't go on them. And so, people are looking for an answer. And, this is a legitimate product. So,
yeah, I mean, it's very hard for a company. And we had the guts, you can call it that, to go on Trustpilot right away. And it's a weight loss company that's hard to do.
Yeah.
And we're still at a 4.2% rating. And most of we had a couple of ones versus a 5. The ones were people that were on the product for 2 weeks and didn't lose 10 pounds.
Yeah, come on.
The other ones were just about some shipping issues that we had. But for the most part, we got a lot of customers that give us testimonials.
If you take a product and lose weight in 2 weeks, it's a stimulant. It's bad for you. Not good.
Exactly.
So, all right, Lance, Converse, thanks for being here, man. Yep. Appreciate the product.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you for coming
Thank you
on.
for having me.
So, all right. Yeah. Like and share the show. Many people need this product. We need a product to compete with GLP-1s. Well, we got the product. We need a product for the brain. Thanks for bringing it.
Yep, for sure.
Got it.